Lovely Traces of Hope. Chapter 16. Be Still. Our first winter after Leisha died in 2006 had been almost unbearable. I'll admit there's a lot I don't remember about that year, but I do remember Kate had jaw surgery over the Christmas break. None of us felt like shopping, baking, decorating the house for the holidays. Those were very long, gray days trapped inside. The only way I can remember it is from a line in Chronicles of Narnia: always winter, never Christmas. The only good thing about that winter came in the form of a schnoodle puppy named Lucy. We got it the girls' request over Thanksgiving. It was sometime after our first 110 days of green, April 28th through August 16th of 2007, I began to notice an intense uneasiness growing in me. Fall was here. Winter was coming. Instead of feeling stronger as I had hoped that I would be by this time, I felt more fearful and more agitated by the day. I sat down one day to try to identify what was happening. The 110 days of green had taught me, one, to pay attention. That had been good for me. Two, to notice green. Green meant hope. It was good. I was looking for hope. Three, to bring people into the journey with us. Yes, this is good. More people could help me find green, which meant I would have more hope, right? Four, the second year of grief is sometimes harder than the first because you don't expect it to be. Oh, the sightings of green that people shared with me in the first 110 days of green were just the thing to lift my heart. I was greatly encouraged. But if one or two green things helped me, then what if there were three or four? I began to feel as if I had to somehow generate more stories of green. What if I told more people about it and they were able to share their stories? What if I blogged about it more and asked more people to share on Facebook? What if I made my family hunt for green? What if I could make things green that weren't green? What if people forget to notice green? What if they forget to share? What if I forget to notice? What if I forget Leisha? The tears flooded from a place deeper than I had ever known before. What if to not see green means I had forgotten Leisha? Shh, let your heart be quiet. My immediate response was to scream within myself, no, I will not let that happen. I will not forget Leisha. I tried to force hope. I pasted on a smile. I felt desperate to make my family remember and do things together that they were not ready to do. I kept saying things to make other people remember, not because I wanted to be in community with them, because I needed them to do for me what I couldn't do for myself. Shh, my child. The more I tried, the more hope seemed out of reach. I kept grasping at anything, everything that hinted at hope. I would sit at the computer for hours looking for new pictures of Leisha, hoping that by pushing her pictures a little faster, I would have some relief, that some of the beauty and the vitality I had seen in her that night she died would come back. I watched every video of her I could find. I stalked her friends' Facebook pages, hoping to find something new of Leisha to cling to. I relished every essay ever sent to me by her friends that used their perspective of Leisha's death as a topic for a class project. Something about seeing green gave me a feeling of hope and therefore gave a bit of relief from the pain that I was feeling. So I began to manipulate green in an effort to force it to show up, hoping that if I did that enough, I would lessen the ache. I was so persistent, in fact, that I went to a dollar store and picked up a silly pair of sunglasses with green lenses. They were not green frames, which would have been seen by others looking at me. I got a pair that had green lenses so I could see green while wearing them. Everything I see will be green. I know. Go ahead and laugh. It was a silly idea. Does it give you a clue to my thought process at the time? But I discovered something almost immediately. When I put on the green glasses and tried to see through a green lens, everything, and I mean everything, began to turn an ugly shade of puke brown. I don't know if that's an actual color, but it's not very pretty. The beautiful greens of the grass or the trees were faded by the artificial green. The blue sky turned gray, and every other color lost its richness and vibrancy. Everything became blah. The very thing I didn't want to happen happened. I didn't want to see any more gray days or brown world stuff. Yet what I was reaching for was actually causing that to be true. My frantic search for green left me flailing my arms about and kicking my legs in a frenzied effort to demand that the grief tunnel, release me. Hush, child. There were times when it was all I could do to breathe, let alone move. I spent all my energy trying to do something I couldn't do, to see something I couldn't see. I would desperately try to get out of the muck, but every step only dug deeper into the darkness and wedged me more securely into the tunnel. It was in those moments of flailing arms and panicked breath that I had to just stop. Stop moving. Stop forcing yourself to breathe. Just let your body begin to function as I intended it to. Close your eyes. Let the eyes of your heart begin to see. Finally, out of sheer exhaustion, I collapsed. But as the crying quieted, I began to hear a familiar voice, not audible, but deep within me. Be still. Slowly, I began to notice I was still breathing. Even on the days I felt like I wanted my breath to end, as Leisha's had, my body continued to take the next breath. In this moment, I was grateful I didn't have to plan it or force it to happen. It was God-given. I was alive. I began to see. With my physical eyes closed, sight came. It was seemingly random events here and there that left a message. Over time, each message tied together with the one before it to affirm and give credence to what God was saying to me. I saw Exodus 14 as the Israelites stood between the Red Sea and the Egyptians. Moses answered the people, "Don't be afraid. Stand firm and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." The message I got from that, I need only to be still. The Lord, the living one who died, will fight for me. I saw a picture Leisha had drawn in black ink on a notebook paper, which was inspired by Chronicles of Narnia. In the center was the light pole, with beams of ink streaming out of to indicate the light was glowing. A dark-haired girl had one arm around the pole, but faced away from the viewer as if she were looking into Narnia. Beside her was a tall evergreen tree, and there were footprints in the snow to show where the girl had come from. Written within the picture were these words: Christmas in Narnia by Leisha Burris, 12/19/2005. Hope is found, though far away in an extremely unexpected way. Strangers fulfill a prophecy of long ago without even knowing how. A lion brings spring in a world frozen in time and releases the wrath of the evil power weaker than it knows. Friends join together to overcome, but with the lion, evil is completely overcome. Hope is on the way. The message I got: hope is on the way. The lion, the living one who died, will overcome the evil. I saw Mark 1:15. The time has come. The kingdom of God is near. I learned the word for time here was kairos, not chronos, the sequential passing of time, 1 minute of time after another kind of time. Kairos is time outside of time. When chronos stands still, it's God's time, and God's watch runs much differently than ours. Kairos time is that moment when heaven touches earth, and the portal between the two worlds opens to allow us to see God in a new way. I had sensed that kind of time as I spoke to Leisha on that beautiful evening on the road, and then again minutes later when time stood still on that country corner and our friends joined us to grieve her death. To be honest, after all my years as a Christ follower, I struggled with this new word a great deal. Could God, who is King of all kings and Lord of all lords, be so near, so intimately aware and involved with my personal needs and concerns? I questioned, especially since the night of Leisha's accident, when he hadn't shown up the way I wanted him to by giving Leisha life. The message I took. As I dared to be still, I can begin to see the many ways he had already broken into my world that night and always. I recalled the Christmas story. Heaven touched earth the night the angel sang and a baby was born in a cattle stall to a virgin mother. I read Luke 2 again and pictured what it must have been like to live in that story. Would I have seen God breaking into my world then? I thought back to summer camp when God broke into my world as a 7-year-old. The chapel speaker had given one of those hellfire and brimstone messages and stated many times that there was only one way to heaven, Jesus. At the end of the evening chapel service, an invitation was given for anyone who wanted to trust Christ as their Savior. I almost ran down to the altar to be sure I had done it right enough to get into heaven. As every head was bowed and every eye was closed, and the last chorus of I Have Decided to Follow Jesus was sung, I sensed I was no longer standing at the altar by myself. I opened my eyes and looked to the floor to see shoes I knew quite well. They were my daddy's shoes. I felt myself relax a little. Be still. As the auditorium emptied, my dad invited me to sit with him on the front row of wooden chairs. He asked me why I had come forward that night. I don't remember my specific words, but I remember how I felt saying them. Daddy, I'm afraid. I don't want to die, and I'm not sure if I'm going to heaven. I don't want God to not know my name when I get there. Yes, I know it's a double negative. I was only 7. My dad put his arm around the back of my chair. Kathy, God doesn't want you to come to him because you're afraid. He wants you to come because he loves you. I want you to read this verse with me. He opened the Bible to the book of John, chapter 3, verse 16. I read those words from the King James Bible, needing a little help with some of the big words. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. I looked puzzled. We talked about the meaning of some of those big words like begotten and whosoever and perish. I knew about Jesus being God's Son. I knew that he was the baby we celebrated at Christmas. I knew he was the Christ who died on the cross and who raised again at Easter. But then my dad reminded me that Jesus had done all of that because of love for me. He read that verse again, but this time he changed some of the words. For God so loved Kathy that he gave his only begotten Son, that if Kathy would believe in him, she would not perish, but have everlasting life. Even as a young child, I was very aware of the difference between being afraid of God's judgment and recognizing He loved me. I was so relieved by God's love, so glad that He loved me enough that He didn't want me to perish, so He provided Jesus. With my dad by my side, I asked God's Son to be my Savior. As I reflect back, I marvel that God had broken into the world of a 7-year-old girl and had spoken intimately through her father to her fearful heart. That was Kairos. Once again, I felt myself relax. Quiet, child. The message? No matter the kind of moment it is, good or bad, happy or sad, long or short, when a Kairos moment happens, God is close by. His kingdom is within reach as the margin between the two worlds gets thinner. If God was close then, that aware of me, where was God breaking into my world now? What was the Kairos in this moment? As I intentionally chose to quiet my mind, heart, body, and spirit, I took a deep breath. I sensed I could quit pursuing green and just let it come to me. Every time God brought a green anything into my path, I was reminded that I didn't want to miss what God was saying. I didn't want to miss what He was trying to teach me. I didn't want this pain to be wasted. If this broken place had to hurt so badly, I wanted it to count, to purify me if that was its purpose, to teach me if I needed to learn, to be used in someone else's life if it could be used to make a difference. Sometimes that invitation was simply to stop and be in the moment. Every time the living one who died showed up, he brought hope with him. Hope in the sound of Leisha's voice on a recorder or a video. Hope in a green stone. Hope in the notes of a friend who faithfully wrote me once a week for an entire year after she died. Hope in a meal I wasn't expecting. Hope in a friend who walked the lane with me. For me, it was a miracle every time. I felt like I had entered into death with Leisha, but I was left to be walking dead while she was experiencing real life after her death. Yet no matter how painful her death had been and continues to be, I sensed that the intensity was just another indication of the depth of my love for her. I wouldn't give up having experienced her birth, her energy, her love for life and people, her struggle for faith and purpose, her passion for green, and the hope that it represents. I was pondering the kairos of that truth one day as I walked down our country lane and turned the corner by the mailbox to continue down the short mile we live on. It had been rare that I would take that walk since the day I had turned east. It was just too hard to go there. But this day, I felt the stillness within, and hope superseded despair in many ways in this 4th year of grief. We had painted Leisha's room, green, of course, though she left hints of her original colors. Let me start that again. We had painted Leisha's room, green, of course, though we had left hints of her original colors showing through in certain places. It felt right to have her original colors peeking through. Caitlin traveled to Israel and Bree to Italy for 3 months of school. They were thriving so far from home. Rennie took on some new ventures with his business. It was proving to be successful. I started classes to get my coaching certification. By the end of the first session, I was making plans to begin my own coaching practice called Green Hope Coaching. As I walked down the lane with our dog Lucy by my side, I was praying for each one of my precious family. At one point, I bent down to pick up a dandelion puff. I tried to blow it. Nothing happened. The seeds were holding tight. I thought that was odd, but I held on to it as I continued to walk. As I finished praying for Rennie, then Caitlin and Bree, I looked to the sky and I just said, Lord, how I wish I could know what Alicia was doing right now. I don't know what her work is or where she spends her time. I don't, I know you can break into my world, but I wish she could. I don't even know how she looks right now. I'd often found myself watching the girls or checking on some of Alicia's friends to see how they had changed over the last 4 years. My mom heart longed to know what Alicia would have chosen to do with her life and how she was maturing as an adult. Lord, I don't know how things work now, but can you give Alicia a message for me? Could you tell her I love her and I miss her? Tell her that I continue to pray for those people that have been impacted by her life and her death. Something in the clouds to the left caught my eye. As I turned to see what it was, the cloud seemed to take a shape, a human shape. More specifically, the shape of a warrior standing tall and strong. It was as if the clouds had outlined this man, including minute details of his face and hair. I was struck that his hair was almost curly, which seemed unusual for the rest of his burly appearance. He was dressed as an ancient Roman warrior with his arms at his side and his feet in sandals with leather armor on his shins. There was a sash across his chest and something like a satchel hanging on his left hip. I stood in the middle of the road and I blinked my eyes several times to be certain my eyes weren't playing tricks on me, since they were cloudy with my own tears. I looked down at Lucy. She was not paying any attention to me. I looked in front of me and behind me to see if anyone was coming down the road, but there was no one. As I looked back to the cloud, the warrior had his kind eyes focused on me. About that time, from behind the sash on his chest, I noticed movement. Out from the satchel came a face I instantly recognized. It was Alicia. I knew her immediately. She moved very slowly at first, as if she were fearful that I would not be able to handle her presence there. I could not take my eyes off of her. She was beautiful. Her face and eyes were the same as the last day I saw her on that same road 40 years earlier, yet they were different. She had a confidence and a calm that only made her more beautiful. Her hair was lovely, but I couldn't describe it to you. It didn't seem important. In a moment, Alicia raised her hand close to her face and wiggled her fingers like she used to, as if to say, "Hi, Mom." I sensed she was still being careful to not frighten me. I waved back in similar fashion, totally caught up in the moment. "Alicia, is that you? Can it really be you? You look beautiful. I was just praying for you." Alicia smiled at me and then looked at the warrior, who seemed to nod his approval to her. She slid down from behind the sash and satchel. "No, Alicia, don't go. Can't you stay?" Then I saw movement again. At first, I could only see her legs as if she were sitting on a cloud with the warrior's feet, with one knee folded under her and the other knee raised. Slowly, I saw her right arm lift as if she reached behind her for something. As her hand came to land on her raised knee, her face turned into view. She smiled at me and then motioned to the thing she was holding in her hand. It was a dandelion puff. "Alicia, I have one too." I raised my dandelion to show her. She leaned into the one she held, pursed her lips together, and began to blow. Seeds flew everywhere. I blinked my eyes. Is this really happening? I instantly felt both great joy and deep sadness rush through me. Joy, because I knew what she was saying to me. Alicia was reminding me that I needed to continue to influence. Our family had watched from that white limousine as people left the memorial service for Alicia. We saw family and friends from all over make their way out of the church doors. I was struck with the thought that Alicia's influence was not just hers anymore, or even ours. It had been passed on to all those who had come to celebrate her life, as seeds are blown from a dandelion. Bree captured that thought in one of the paintings she did her senior year. Leisha blew the dandelion of influence, each seed turning colors as it blew away and turned into a butterfly. Each butterfly carried the name of a close friend. Leisha was reminding me to keep influencing. I got the message at once. But I was also filled with deep sadness because the dandelion I held in my hand had not released when I tried to blow it. It was a few minutes ago already. In all the time I had been walking, not one seed had come off of it. My dandelion didn't work like Leisha's did. Leisha just looked at me and smiled and signaled for me to blow anyway. I did. My breath caught as all the seeds released and flew away, as if they were carried by a light wind. I don't remember when Leisha went away. I don't remember seeing the warrior or the clouds changing again, or even how long it took me to get back to the house. I only know I had seen Leisha. She had spoken to me without words, and I knew what to do. I was to make a difference. I needed to keep saying, I'm going. Come with me. I know. I've been a bit skeptical in the past when someone shared a vision from a loved one. I would have come up with some way their mind could have manufactured the whole thing. But I always wondered if God might actually have allowed them to experience such a personal connection. Now, God met me in a miraculous way. This was a kairos. It was not a random moment. I have never experienced anything like it before, yet I knew it was from the Lord. I knew that it was Leisha. I knew that her message was consistent with everything I had been hearing until now. Leisha had been real. She spoke to the core of my prayer and changed my life. At first, I was afraid to share it with Ren. What if he thinks I'm losing it? What if he tries to explain away what happened? I wondered myself if I was seeing things, if my mind was getting carried away, if I was conjuring things up just to ease the ache that was still present. But as I revealed what I had seen to him, tears began to fall down his cheeks. Kathy, I don't know how it happened. I just know God heard your prayer and answered it in a very real way for you. No, this is not a common occurrence. But in a precious moment, God opened up the portal from heaven and sent my daughter to me with a message that was tied specifically to all of the other random messages I had been hearing. Be still. Hope is on the way. The living one who died is breaking into your world. Continue to influence. In the miracle of her birth, in the anguish of her death, in the mystery of this moment, I have seen God bigger and more able than I ever knew him to be before. That's a kairos. But that's only half of the story.